Welcome to Nephew and Uncle Basketball Banter. I'm joined by my co-host, Dave Scholler. We're going to have a few NBA topics, and then we're going to get into our college hoop that was excellent over the weekend. Wouldn't you say so, Dave?
Yeah, everything's exciting. All the hoop topics out there. The hoop world's in full fashion. It's watching a ton of college and high school, all different levels. Been fun.
We're going to start with some news that just happened over this weekend here. Derrick Rose had his jersey number retired from the Bulls.
Yeah.
And the Bulls, they have only four guys currently that have their jerseys retired. You got Jerry Sloan, Bob Love, Michael Jordan, and Scottie Pippen. So Derrick Rose will join those four men with his jersey retired. And Derrick Rose, he had 7 seasons with the Bulls, and he was a three-time All-Star. And obviously, Derrick Rose is a big what if, with his
Sure.
injuries that happened, everything. I know you talked about it. Guy's under 6'4". He's one of the best guys under that 6'4" range that you ever saw. Explosive.
Second best player I've seen under 6'1".
Yeah.
Isaiah Thomas being the first,
Right. Right. Yeah. So Derrick Rose,
in my opinion.
yeah, just he had, even after the injuries he had, he still had a decent career. He really did. He was still a solid player for the Bulls for a couple more seasons, but those injuries obviously just zapped him of all the athletic ability that he had prior to the injury. Like he had 3 more seasons here. He averaged 16, 17, and 16
Sure.
for the Bulls. He was still a solid player. He's averaging 5, 4 assists a game and 3 rebounds, but he never returned to that MVP form where he was averaging 20
No,
points a game.
those non-contact injuries, those are the worst. Teddy Bridgewater, he's never the same again.
So the year that Derrick Rose got hurt, he had a bunch of injuries leading up to that ACL injury. He had, I think it was back and toe problems. He had a couple of those kind of things. So he had the injury bug the whole year. And then just the wheels fell off in that game 1 playoff game against the 76ers. And then he was just never the same
Yeah,
again. So obviously it's a shame. I can't wait. I think one day we will have a documentary about him on ESPN or something with Netflix
sure.
because this guy was just an unbelievable player. And the thing about him that I love too, he was just a guy who played hard. You never heard any bad things about him as far as locker room stuff. Never,
Legendary work ethic.
yeah, never bitched and moaned. Just seemed like a guy who just absolutely loved the game.
Yeah.
And he's a Chicago native who played at Simeon High School. So
Yep.
obviously the city of Chicago just loves the guy. I thought
Sure.
about this for a little bit, for a minute or two, and I thought, does he deserve to have his jersey number retired? I think so. Everything he means to the city, I think, and
Sure.
he played there. He was unbelievable. It was very exciting. I think he's deserving of having his jersey retired. What do you think, Uncle Dave?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, like four retired. It's obviously the Bulls selected, but when you have a guy win an MVP, obviously Mike is in there, I'm sure, and I think Scotty must be in there, right?
Jerry Sloan and Bob Love. Those are the four
Barry
guys.
Sloan and Bob Love too. I mean, so I think winning an MVP and being involved in the city and coming from the city, I feel like he definitely is a guy that should have it retired. So I understand that. I'm in full support of it. I think it's something that's good. He's a good guy. He tried to come back with the Knicks. He had some productive years off the bench. Tibbs always loved him, and Tibbs doesn't love that many guys. If not for him, probably Tibbs probably wouldn't have his coaching job right now. I guess he took that team to a deep playoff run, a very flawed team, not a team that could score easily. Problem with Rose is that he's so athletic, and that was such a part of his game that once you don't have that spring anymore, he was always a good shooter, not a great shooter. And so he could attack the rim though, like no other. But the problem is once you lose that natural spring from your game, when your game relies heavily on athleticism, you're not the same player anymore.
Yeah, he's a guy, Derrick Rose, too. He only weighs 200 pounds. And how, Uncle Dave, you watched enough of him. I mean, he attacked the rim. I mean, there was no break wise.
No,
He attacked the rim just relentlessly, this guy.
he was relentless.
Yeah, he just flew through the air like a bird, and this was still at the time, the beginning of his career there. He started in 2008, 2009. You could still be a little physical around the rim with guys back then a little bit,
Sure.
It's only recently where they're going to the monitor for fouls and everything like that. But, he was relentless with how he attacked the basket and everything. He was never a great outside shooter, so also that influenced him into attacking the paint. And he was an
Yep.
underrated defender too, I thought. I thought he just really played his ass off all the time. So I always liked watching Derrick Rose play. So no pun intended, he deserves his roses, Derrick Rose. So I'm happy to
Sure.
see his jersey number retired. He's always someone that when we talk about him, nothing but good things to say about him, I think.
No, he gave his best to the game, and I think he's a guy that I could see him coaching. I really could. I
Yeah,
think
I
he's a
think
guy
he
that
has
would
a
give
lot
back.
to give back to the game for sure. I think whether it's a advisory role or coaching, you don't have any former teammates coming out and said he dogged this or he was an a-hole, none
No,
of that. So I'm happy to see him get his jersey number retired, and I thought we would
Yeah,
start with that with Derrick Rose, a guy
yeah, it's
we
great.
both enjoyed watching over the years.
Sure, he was an explosive player, and like I said, second best guy under 6'1" I've seen. Him and Isaiah being the first. And I'm
What's
not a fan of
incredible,
Isaiah, but on
right?
this program, I don't tell you just because I like a guy. Couldn't stand
Right.
Isaiah, but he was a great player.
What's incredible too about Derrick Rose is after the knee injury, he still plays 11 more seasons. So he had a 15-year career. It's incredible that he still was able to, and he was still a pretty good player. He's with the Timberwolves, he's with the Pistons, he's still averaging, you're looking at it here, 18 points. He's averaging still 4 or 5 assists a game.
Yeah,
Yeah, so just and playing still 27, 26 minutes. He obviously, he couldn't play 30 plus minutes anymore, but he still was a pretty damn good player all those years
yeah.
later.
He did his best to hang on, and he tried to recover. And unlike some of the guys of today, he actually made an effort, and
Yeah.
he tried to hang in there and give his best back. But I think Father Time, as we know, Father Time's undefeated.
Yeah, so definitely one of those throwback kind of mentalities though. So
Sure,
happy
old
for
school
Derrick
player.
Rose and the Bulls franchise. I think it's the right thing
Sure.
that got done there. Going to transition, Uncle Dave, to two guys that are not in the NBA anymore, but two guys that I really thought actually were going to be pretty good pros. And it's hard to tell what kind of career guys are going to have. You can't make promises of guys going to be multiple time All-Star or anything. You have a feeling if a guy's going to have a long career or not. Jahlil Okafor, former Duke guy,
Yep.
and Kevin Knox. Going to start with Jahlil Okafor, though. He's not played in the NBA since 2020-21 season. And he
Correct.
had a monster game in the G League. And I've looked at his numbers in the G League. He's shooting 65% from the field, and he's averaging 19 points, 9 rebounds, and 3 assists. And he's shooting 75% from the line. Now, I just want to get into him a little bit as far as I don't know about you, but I'm shocked this guy's not in the NBA. That he did not work out. I'm going to make a comparison that is going to seem probably ridiculous now, but he reminds me a lot when he was coming out of college and how this guy is shaped up now of Jokic. Good
Hmm.
hands, good feet, a technician around the rim with his back to the basket. And I thought he would be incredible, I thought, from like 18 feet with the pick and pop game in the NBA. So to see him not in the NBA is kind of shocking to me, but he's lost weight, he's put some muscle on. I think he's looking to make obviously he's still trying to get in the league here, so I'm happy to see that. But I'm gotta say I'm kind of surprised he's not in the NBA right now.
Well, he got a bad rap as a guy who wasn't in shape. That's funny. Him and Knox both got a bad rap for that. But Ja, as Coach K used to call him, I'm always a little loyal to him because he got us Dookies a national championship in 2015.
Yep.
But very skilled player. Very very good feet. Good skill level. Good little jump hook there. Could hit a 15-footer. I think in the NBA he's ruled too slow, probably because of pick and roll coverage. He probably doesn't move his feet quick
Yep.
enough with the game being so out of the paint now. But I think he'll be back in the NBA shortly because, and don't forget, I mean, I don't know what his contract status still was. He did sign a big deal, so I don't know, like, if anybody picks him up, what they have to pay him. That could be part of it too. I'm not exactly sure of his status there, but I'm sure his contract's expired by now. But the thing is, this is a guy that if you bring him off the bench, he's a guy you can run your offense through for 7 or 8 minutes each half while your starters get a rest. He's definitely good enough to do that. He's good enough to draw a double team, and if you don't double team him, he's good enough to put it in the basket. So he's a guy that a lot of teams might covet down the stretch, just because, like I said, you can run your offense through him while your starters are getting a rest, and that's what that second group's about. Trying to find someone to get you a couple of buckets. He's like I said, it's again didn't had not committed to his body. Had got a big contract, but again, a lot like the quarterbacks you see, sometimes these guys need longer. He's a guy who comes out after freshman year, and this is why coming out after freshman year, I think, is so hard these days. I mean, both these guys, Knox comes out after freshman year, goes to the Knicks. He gets like his 10 to 15 minutes a night, but never really got invested in. Toppin was a guy recently that the Knicks had that got a little more invested in, but even him didn't get invested in enough. And you can't blame the NBA coaches because if they don't win, they don't eat. And so, it's a situation where they can't really wait around for you. But again, it's a guy that I think could definitely help somebody. I think he'd be better off on a team that's up and coming so he could play instead of going to one of these better teams. I
Yeah,
mean,
he's only
you telling
29
me,
still. He's
yeah,
29 years old. So
yeah, you telling me that the Oklahoma City Thunder couldn't use him off the bench with that second group and try to get a couple of buckets through him? They definitely could.
well, that's the argument too we're making. I mean, to be on a roster here, I think it's to me it's a no-brainer. So he averaged also 19 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 assists in the G League last year as well. So I mean,
Yeah,
he's been
he's
productive
reformed.
here. So he's obviously looking to make a comeback here. I think what you said, a lot of guys they come out of as a freshman, and this hits them like cold water to the face all of a sudden. You're You're expected to, you're more independent. You're not really in a structured environment like how you are in college where they're up your ass constantly. So
Right.
if you're not treating it like a profession, you're going to go to the wayside. And that's kind of, I think, what happened with him and Kevin Knox. But it's nice to see these guys are making a push to get back in the league. And yeah, like
Yeah.
you said, I think for a second unit to have him as a five man to me I think is obvious, quite frankly. So I think
Yeah.
he will get another chance. I think he's not played his last NBA game. I think that's what you're alluding to as well there for sure.
Yeah, and I think that Knox is a difficult situation. He's got to get a little. He never was a great athlete. He's got to thin down. He's also got to become a 3-and-D guy
Right,
because he's not a great athlete, but he's a guy that if he can become serviceable with that shot, obviously it's 6'7", 6'8", and now maturing into his body. I think he's a guy that can help somebody. But again, it's all about availability. And the good news is if they're cheaper now, somebody will pick them up for like that minimum. And
right,
they'll, if I think the minimums are under 500,000, but I mean, someone will pick them up. Now, neither of them need a lot of money. I think they both got good rookie contracts. I know Ja did, but Knox, I know, was in the middle of the first round. So I think he was the seventh or eighth pick around there. So he's a guy that I feel like probably made good money on his rookie deal too. So it's not that they're starving to death, but I'm glad to see that they're both hanging around and still trying to work on their game and have made some adjustments because if they didn't make any adjustments, they wouldn't be in the G League either. They'd be
right.
gone.
Yeah, he had a game, Kevin Knox, where he had 39 points and he had 82% from the field. So
Yeah,
he just had a game where he was incredible. John had a game where he was 38 points,
sure.
18 to 21 from the field. So
That's awesome.
and
18 to
Kevin,
21.
yeah, incredible. So Kevin Knox, he played on an NBA team last year. He played for the Pistons last year, and he averaged 7 points a game for them, and he got 18 minutes a game. So not
That's
bad.
pretty good.
So
And
he
the
just
Pistons could use some help.
yeah, so he was in the league last year, but not on a team this year, and he's only 25. So in the G League, he's
Yeah.
averaging 19 points and 7 rebounds for himself, and he's shooting 47% from the field. So.
And
And
here's the scary part.
he's 6'7". To me, a guy like Bradley Beal like is a good player comp for him, I feel like.
And the funny thing is, you get a guy like that who's probably only 2 or 3 years older than some of the guys who are on their fifth year deal here in the nil.
Right.
So here's a guy who's 2 or 3 years older than him. He's already been in the league. So he's a guy that's a good risk. And that's why I think drafting right now is probably with all this other stuff has become harder than ever because now you might get some older players who don't want to rush out, which is could be a good thing for the overall product of the NBA. But
And
at
college
the same
actually too.
yeah, and at the same time, you take that NBA, you did young guys, a freshman or a sophomore. It's difficult. Like I said, you can even see it with the quarterbacks. You're watching this, it takes guys different time to develop. I understand the guys who can't wait to develop. I know in the coaching world, they never fire the players, they fire the coaches. So it's a situation where I get it, but it doesn't mean the guy can't play. Sometimes a change of scenery is a great thing.
I agree with that. I think also the fact that these guys are still so young too. So it's not like you got a guy who's 39 or 35 here. You guys got guys that are not even 30 yet. And all
Yeah.
right, yeah, they didn't work out in their first go around, but you get a guy who fails once that's extremely hungry now at this point. So, and like you said, you don't have to risk anything on them here.
No, you don't. It's
You
low risk. It's probably going to be low value, low risk, and it's not going to hurt you.
Right. So I think that I would be surprised if these guys don't get a shot at some point. So I think sooner rather than later, especially since they're
Yeah.
producing in the G League. So
Yeah, I think Okafor, size is always at a premium.
and
I
both
mean,
these guys too, they're not guys that are, banging their head against the wall here kind of play styles. They're very fluid in their games. Both guys
they
are
are
very
skilled.
skilled
They are
offensively.
skilled players.
So, both guys can play in the mid-range here. Obviously, it's Okafor is a post player, and Knox is a perimeter player, but Okafor, like I said, just incredible skill and footwork down low, and Kevin Knox,
Sure,
on the
sure,
perimeter, really good pull-up game. He can score from all three levels. So
sure.
these guys, I'm sure we'll see them again at some point. All right, Uncle Dave, we're going to transition now to our college hoop here. I watched this Florida and Kentucky game from top to bottom, and what a game this
Yeah,
was.
great game.
My goodness, here you had a really high scoring game. Florida came into this game 13-0, and Kentucky was
Yep,
11-2.
yep,
I have to say, this was a type of game where even if there was a great offensive play or a great defensive play, it wasn't because the opposition was playing bad offense or bad defense. I think a lot of
true,
times you have a great defensive play. It's not necessarily careless offense. And this game, I think, showed that both teams, when they
sure,
were making plays, it was just the other team was just making that much of a better play, resulting in
sure.
a negative outcome for you. But it was an
Yeah,
incredible game here. I mean, but also the coaches here. I didn't know this, but Coach Pope for
yep,
Kentucky
yep.
at BYU, he was 110 and 52. That's
Yes, he was. Yeah.
unbelievable. And overall record of coaching 197 and 110 coming into this game. So
Sure.
how do you gauge how he's been at Kentucky so far? Obviously, he's been fantastic so far this year, but overall as a coach, how have you liked
Well, he
watching him?
had to hit he had to hit the portal hard after Calipari left because I think the whole team is new. He does have the best shooter in college, I think, these days. Ujabari is such a good shooter. I think he was 6 or 7 yesterday from three at one
That was
point.
unbelievable. He came off the bench, that guy too, and yeah,
Yep.
Brea,
And
Kobe
I
Brea,
like this.
23 points, eight of
Yeah, yeah, Brea.
7 of 9
I
from
love
three.
this. Yeah, I love the style of play. Pope's always been a good guy. I like the fact that he's buttoning it back up, wearing a suit on the sidelines. I like to see that again. I
That's the
know
other thing,
Kobe
Uncle
would be.
Dave. I'm gonna go on a little bit of a tirade. I think it's too casual now. I liked when my coaches wear suits.
Yeah, that's why I still love watching Rick Pitino too. I mean, to me, it's to show some damn respect for the game. During COVID, we lost all that bullshit. But
Right,
bottom line is, what does that have to do with lack of respect for the game? Got too many guys standing up on the bench, all kinds of bullshit. Started in the bubble, and
right,
then in the
right,
bubble, which was just a useless thing. And
right,
here we are, and you know, I had 35 guys standing up on your bench. Like it used to be in the old days, the assistant stood up, you get a fucking technical foul, sit the fuck down and
right.
shut
Yeah,
up.
no, I know you have like 7 guys in
Um,
the back now. Yeah,
yeah. So, I like to, I'd rather go back to that. Like, shut the hell up, have some respect for the game. And, but it's gone down different levels. Excuse my French, by the way. But, yeah, it was a great game. Florida has three great guards. Only Clayton showed up. Clayton used to play for Patino at Iona. They played UConn in the tournament in that first round, and they were beating them at the half. The only time UConn was trailing at the half all tournament in their first title. And he was going to go with Patino to St. John's, but Gainesville's much nicer than Jamaica Queens. So he's down playing in Florida, and he's made himself into quite the NBA player. I think he's a good prospect for the NBA. Might be a little small, but we'll see. He could score. And Kentucky got out. Again, a lot of the big runs in these games that we've been talking about in the last couple of sessions we've met. It was a great game. The SEC this year is as deep as it's been since the mid '90s. And that's 30 years ago, obviously. I can say that because I've been watching it even longer than that. It is as deep as it's been. There's probably 9 to 10 really good teams. There's 16 teams in the top 60 in the SEC now. A lot of that's a lot of pomp and circumstance because the net ratings and the Ken Palm stuff is a load of crap because I don't
and
know
in the
if we're giving
top
out any.
25 too, by the way.
Right. I don't know if we're giving out
Yeah,
any titles in November and January and December, but I think Ken Palm and Net for their own self business tries to do that. But the thing is, yeah, but the bad news is they're gonna have the problem that the ACC, the Big East, and the Big Ten have had over the years. You're gonna start cannibalizing each other, and those leagues become coach killers. And so you can get off to a good start, and all of a sudden you could be, looking at the bottom of the standings, and all of a sudden your alumni base is, unhappy because they think they know a little hoop, and then all of a sudden you're in big trouble. So it's one of those situations. So people can definitely get in the way that way. So it's a real problem. But like Kentucky and Florida will both be in the tournament, so I don't have to worry. It's funny that the Florida coach, he's had a scandal from a sexual harassment suit that
yes,
came
Todd
out like the
Todd
first day of the
Golden, right?
season.
Yep, yeah.
And I think he might be holding them back a little bit once the games come down to it because his body language and stuff I think is going to hurt them in a big spot.
Yeah, I
But
thought it was a little weird, some of his stuff on the
yeah,
sideline. Yeah, his face, his facial expressions and everything.
I
Yeah.
think that's going to hurt him. But it's so funny that all that talk died down because they're winning. If they were, 5-8, he'd
Oh,
be out.
forget it.
But
Yeah, he'd be gone.
they're,
Right,
they're,
13-0. Right, that's
they're
all.
13-0. The world's forgiving, as we know. So that's all gone. So, and nobody seems to care about that as much all of a sudden. It's amazing how that works.
Yeah, no, I mean
But
for a college basketball game though, for 106 to 100 in favor of Kentucky here. Both teams
yeah,
top 10 in scoring. So it was a
there's so many good games this weekend. I mean, Michigan State beat Ohio State on the road. The kid Booker is definitely a pro for Tom Izzo. I watched that game late Friday night. Great game. He's about 6'11". He's like a mobile version of more skilled version of Marcus Camby for those of you out there who might remember Marcus Camby, UMass product. Georgetown on Friday night looks real. Ed Cooley has them playing really well. G-Town looks legit. They're going to probably be an NCAA tournament team. That's an amazing job by him in the second year. Marquette beat Creighton on Friday night. And then, like you said, the first game I watched Saturday was that Kentucky Florida game. Carolina saved their season with that 4-point play. A couple of shady
Oh my
whistles down the
goodness. Yeah,
stretch.
how about that? North Carolina's down 73-70 and hits a
Yep.
three with getting fouled and then converts the free throw to. So what's as a
And then,
coach, what's your theory on that? Do you like fouling? Do you like playing it out?
well, it's funny. I've tried both ways. 2 weeks ago, we fouled all the way down to 4.3, and then we switched without meaning to switch, and we got the game tied at the buzzer and lost in overtime. So I've done both. Usually, I like to do one thing and get a stop, but I've done it both ways and won. I've done it both ways and given up the tying three. So it's you pick your poison. People always say you have to foul. I totally disagree. I've seen Duke beat Carolina twice because they did foul. I've seen, like I said, we did foul the other day. But then again, we switched and we shouldn't have switched. Nobody called switch, but our players brain farted and switched. So it's it's personal preference. I'd rather get one stop. It's easier. You only have to do one thing, get a stop. To me, if you want to get that stop, then it is okay to call a switch. And if you're working on that in practice on dribble handoffs and stuff like that, because the high school level when a team needs a three, that dribble handoff's usually a good way to get it, and somebody goes under and then you can pull it. But yeah, so then the bad news is the point guard for Notre Dame goes down and gets contact, and nobody calls it. And that's funny because Cadeau's not even a good shooter for Carolina, so it's kind of a weird game. Carolina, that's like I hate to say this early because I like Hubert Davis, but that's a game that
Oh, you
they
lose
lose
that
that
one.
game.
Oh my
They
goodness.
lose that
Yeah,
game. They're gonna start they're gonna start rumbling over there because
absolutely. Yeah.
you're not allowed to be 500 at Carolina. We
No,
talked about this.
we've talked about, yeah, yeah, last
Carolina,
week.
Duke, Kentucky, you're just not allowed. So the thing is, they're gonna start yanking on Hubert a little bit. I mean, the freshman played well off the bench. Davis is finding out what it's like to be the top dog. He doesn't have Baycott anymore, so everybody's like, "Well, what's wrong with Davis's numbers? What's wrong with Davis's numbers? Is he's being guarded by two or three people every time he goes to the rack." So that was a good game yesterday. Georgia Tech beat Boston College. Such a big game because one of them, they both came in 1-2, 1-1. No, 1-2, and one of them was going to get out of there 2-2. And for BC or Georgia Tech to be 2-2 after 4 games in the ACC is progress. So G Tech got a good win. So Wake blew out NC State in the second half. That was a big game. Salas again was huge. He's definitely going to be first team All ACC at this point. That's a big win for Wake. Wake is definitely an NCAA tournament team. I hope they don't get screwed. You can see that the kid Carr is on Kentucky. The big white fella Carr there. He's a good player. He'd be at Wake. He left Wake last year, so you can see that he would have really helped Wake. Locally, Stony Brook had a rough one versus William and Mary, having a tough year and having trouble scoring baskets. Hofstra and Northeastern with 19-18 at the half, and then Hofstra blew them out in the second half. Villanova pounded DePaul. They needed that win. Nova's 3-1 in the Big East, but they're still not really an NCAA tournament team. Duke was solid. SMU is going to be trouble for people.
Yeah, they
SMU's
kind of
got
gave Duke some problems throughout the game. They
they did.
definitely were a pain in the ass. Yeah.
SMU I've watched 4 times now. He's the former coach at Gulf Coast and USC. He's done a good job.
You know what I like about them too? They played hard the whole game. These guys, they really were.
The one thing about them too is they have 3 or 4 guys that can all score in different ways. So they're
Right.
going to be a problem for people. Plus, their pace of play is one of the highest in the country. So SMU, you haven't heard the last of them. They're going to be good. St.
Yeah.
John's got a gut check for his Butler. Scrappy win. Michigan beat USC late last night in a Big Ten game, and I still can't get over Michigan beating Michigan. The former FAU coach is at Michigan. He took the big kid Golden with him, and you can see he's already turned Michigan around. So he's obviously Michigan spending the dollars. Clemson beat Cal late last night for you people who didn't stay up for that one. So that covered all the Saturday games that were big. Um, Illinois held on against a good Washington team today. Washington is very good, but again, here we are in the Big Ten, and you're already like chasing the 8 ball. And Penn State lost a tough one at Indiana at home. Penn State's been off to a great start with Mike Rhodes as the coach, but that's a bad loss. You got to win those home games. And again, the Big Ten coaches eating themselves. I mean, this is what's going to happen. Look at my guys at Rutgers, one of my favorite teams in the country. You're facing pressure games. You get to suppose you go 8-10 in the Big Ten. That's not going to cut it. Or you go 9-11. You're already got pressure on you. It's Purdue beat Northwestern and Oregon beat Maryland. Now Maryland has this West Coast swing. They're 1-2 now in the Big Ten. So now Maryland's got to host UCLA this week, and they got to get back to the start, or else Maryland, which is a really good team, is already behind the 8 ball in the Big Ten. So it's a lot of these leagues just eat each other, and so it's really, really a lot of coach killing. When you expand a league to 15 or more teams, you're asking for trouble. I mean, the teams in the middle just wind up cannibalizing each other. It happens every year. I've watched it for years. ACC's a little down this year, but I've watched it for years with teams just crush each other, and that's how coaches wind up without jobs. But I guess that's just the way it goes, and it's such a big business now.
No, it's also Uncle Dave. I watched this Tennessee and Arkansas game.
Great game.
Did you get to see any of that? And you know what the weird thing about this game was? Arkansas, they lose 76-52. But Arkansas, I felt like was closer in this game than the score reflects. I thought
They didn't look bad. Yeah,
they got a lot of really good looks. The ball just was not going down for these guys, And Tennessee, obviously, the offensive rebounds were a problem for them. But I thought Arkansas played a pretty good game, and I think Coach Cal, honestly, he did the right thing. I think leaving Kentucky because the last three seasons at Kentucky, he was losing in the first round or the second round of the tournament. And like as
That's
you
not
said,
acceptable. Yeah,
not acceptable at Kentucky. So I think him going to Arkansas, it gives him a new shot in the arm here. So,
I agree with you,
basically
100%.
for a second win. So I thought it was good for both Kentucky and him to move on, I think. So he's
Well,
obviously doing really good here, 11-3 and 0-1 in the conference, but they looked pretty good,
sure.
I thought. They just didn't hit their field goals, I thought. That they oh good looks that they
Yeah.
got.
But here's then. So Arkansas gets off to a great start, but now you're 0-1 in the conference. So again, so just suppose you get to 0-2 in the conference. It's just
Yeah, it's hard to
it's
dig
just
yourself out of the hole. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
it's just so rough. I mean, it's just
Plus,
it's to a point
let's
where
your first conference game is against the number one team on their floor. So I mean that's as difficult as it gets right there. So if
yeah.
you're him, you
And
got to be in the locker room saying, "Hey, it's can't get any harder than what we just went through."
yeah, and this is a big problem, but it's you're gonna
How
see
about
the Big
Chaz Lanier?
12.
They have 29 points. Jesus, oof, 10
Yeah.
of 20
I
from the
mean,
unbelievable.
yesterday two teams were really good on the offensive board. Tennessee was good and Florida was really good on the offensive board. That's how they stayed in that game with Kentucky.
Yeah.
That and Clayton. But yeah, Tennessee just plays great defense. Them and Houston play great defense. Houston's one of the better defensive teams. Tennessee, again, you're not going to go through the SEC unscathed, so they're going to suffer a loss in the next week or two. But this is a very good Tennessee team. I'd just like to see if they could score enough in crunch time to win a title. Rick Barnes, I've been a big fan of his since Providence and Clemson. He's always been a solid coach,
Yeah, yeah.
excellent coach, done good jobs. It's not easy to win in those two places, and he did. So I'm happy for him. It's good to see Tennessee being number one. So love the orange. So it's exciting to watch that. But it's tough sledding in those big leagues. Like I said, the Big 12 right now is starting to cannibalize itself already. I mean, look at Kansas. You already got a loss in the Big 12. West Virginia took them out.
How
But
about that
both
game, Uncle Dave?
Michigans,
11 times West Virginia played at Kansas, and they were 0-11 until the
yeah,
last time they just played.
yeah, and this is not even your typical West Virginia team,
No,
but with
no,
the
they're
portal,
down. Yeah, they're down
yeah,
compared to what they've been in years past. Yeah.
but with the portal these days, this is how quickly these things can change, and that's why the preseason rankings, to me, as we talked about in the first podcast together, that I thought were just totally foolish because it
Yeah,
just
right.
doesn't mean anything
No, it
because you have
doesn't.
all these new bodies.
I mean, you're literally you're pulling, I think, names out of a hat there when you're
Yeah,
when you're
well,
preseason
you have all
ranking.
these new
So,
bodies, and
right,
nobody's worked together yet, and you're not going to really know a lot until late January. But you could kill your season by late January in college, and that's the problem. So I mean, like you say, you can't win it all in late January, but you could be out in late January, and that's the
right,
problem.
right,
I mean, look at the Cincinnati Bengals again today. If they start out 4-8, people go, oh, blah blah blah, but they start out crappy every year, and this is the result.
right.
So you can't win it all that early, but you could sure lose your season. So they didn't lose because of what happened in the last week or two. They lost because they went 4-8.
Yeah, I think
You
also
know,
it's not just the bodies that are changing, but it's the type of bodies that are changing. Like Lamont Butler, he hits a game-winning shot for San Diego State last year in the Final Four. He's on a completely different team this year. He's on Kentucky now.
oh yeah,
So you have
oh
guys
yeah,
that are big time players now. They produce big time and big moments for these schools, and they're still changing. So year to
sure.
year, it's truly even when college basketball you didn't have all the NIL and the transferring, it was still year to year. But more than ever now, it's certainly that way.
Well, you see, the NCAA ruled the other day that they're trying to get 5 years of eligibility off of the ruling that last week they said that they're not going to count junior college years. So if you're going to make that happen,
If
everybody
junior
will go to
college
junior
isn't college,
college.
then what is it? Stop calling it
Yeah.
junior college. Then it's
So
prep.
then guys will get to play 7 years. So then basically guys will be 26 years old. The high school senior will never get recruited.
Right, right, exactly.
So what would be the incentive to go anywhere but junior college? And
Right.
then let's be honest, a lot of the junior colleges don't hold the guys' feet to the fire academically. Not that
No,
the Division ones are anymore either, but
no.
we're creating a mess here. We're creating a pool of false expectations for your life coming forward. When you get out without a degree and you've played all this basketball, what do you got? You got nothing. So now you got to go get a job. You got to put a tie on. You don't have a degree because you've been to 7 schools. Your credits didn't all transfer. You played 7 years of college basketball. You got 95 credits. Now what the hell are you doing? But I know we're not supposed to care about that anymore. But it's just, it's setting up a system where you're having false life expectations, and you're gonna have a lot of guys walking around talking about the old days without a job.
Yeah,
So
it's still
it's just
supposed to be. It's supposed to be student athletes still, even though he got NIL. It's supposed to be student athletes. So
sure. And if you want to pay the players, I'm all involved, but we got to have some rules as far as transferring. Got to have some rules as far as how many years of eligibility,
right,
sitting out when you want to transfer. You still got to make them go to class. You still got to have something here for Christ's sake. We're screwing the kids in the long run. You think you're doing them a favor, and you're making it easy for them, the path of least resistance, but you're really screwing them in the end. And that's why they're called kids. You're supposed to still be a beacon to be to guide them, and we're not doing that anymore.
right. No, it's Uncle Dave. Also, getting back to this Florida and Kentucky game here. Kentucky, they had six guys in double figures, unbelievable, and their leading scorer Brea came off the bench, 23
Yeah,
points, absolutely
and
ridiculous.
that's what helps you in March, though, if you need a bucket. Carr, like I said, I think he only had 10 or 11 the other day, but he's a guy that last year for Wake, was getting big bucket after big bucket. So you know that obviously, he's a big time player when he needs to be. And like I said, six guys in double figures is a big bonus. One of those things where
Me, obviously, you watched more than I did over the weekend, but to me, this I can't imagine there was a better game this weekend than this one here. I
no,
mean,
that was the best. That's why that game being at 11 o'clock on Friday was like Christmas.
right? Yeah.
Because you get home from practice, whatever you're doing, and you get to turn on Kentucky and Florida, and you can't do any outdoor work because it's 40 below. So you're like, you're free to watch basketball.
This game felt like kind of a college basketball game from back in the day. I mean, both teams were
It
just
did.
playing extremely hard, extremely skilled. Kentucky
Sure.
only, and think of it, you have 106 to 100 games, so a lot of possessions, really up and down. Kentucky only turns the ball over 5 times, and Florida only.
Amazing.
How is that possible? It's taking care of the ball that much. And Clayton, keep in mind, he had 33 points, but he had 5 of the turnovers for Florida, so he has the majority of the bulk of the 8. But
Yeah.
just incredible, though. Guys
Well,
just not making, and that's the other thing too. Smart play. You had for Florida and Kentucky a lot of motion, a lot of backdoor cuts, a lot of pin downs. Guys running things effectively here, and Clayton Jr. too. I mean, there was so many shots. He had one. He hits a three. Right, guy draped right on top of him as the shot clock's expiring. And Brea just reminded me kind of a Klay Thompson, just catch and shoot, quick
yeah.
release. So
Yeah, it
this
reminded me of Trajan Langdon for a minute.
yeah, just incredible. And obviously at Rupp Arena, this was just an incredible game. And then even guys that for like Florida, like Chinyelu, just on the offensive
Yes.
board and everything, just playing his role. He's a guy. You look at him, you're like, there's no reason he can't be a guy that's like a Tyson Chandler, it's a guy who can just catch lobs and rotate and play defense. So I think in this game,
Sure.
you might have had 5, 6 NBA guys on the floor here between both teams, quite frankly.
Well, I think the turnovers are so low because the one thing that the 3-point shot and the over use of it is done is it spaced the floor out. So I think there's less turnovers in that respect sometimes. I think if you have adequate ball handling and spacing, it does cut your turnovers at. But if you have too much spacing and inadequate ball handling, then those longer passes are made by people who are less experienced guards. Then you do get turnovers. You get those run out turnovers. But I think when you have good guards like that game yesterday, and you have the kind of spacing that you have on the floor, where you're afraid to give help, or you're going to give up a three, I think that creates a situation where you have very few turnovers, and that's why it was such a high level game. It was played very well. It's scary though because if you're a team in the SEC and you watch that game, and you're thinking to yourself, well, I can't compete with either one of those teams. So now I'm 0-4.
Right. Yeah. No, I think this is. Luckily, you're not going to have to play them when your season's on the line for some of those SEC teams,
Sure,
or you're going to have to play in
sure.
Rupp Arena to win. But it's just,
Well, that's what's crazy though. Like I think it's 16 teams in the top 60. Like I said, the net ratings are a little crazy, but still,
it's
there are
ridiculous.
legitimately 16 decent teams in that league. The problem is two or three are going to get eaten.
That's
So
it.
you're going to
Yeah.
be even in the even in the league, like I said, Big 12 right now in the ACC, not traditionally where they're usually at, but they're going to eat each other too. And you could see that it's already happened with opening and job openings in these leagues, and there's some guys that are going to be on the hot seat, and it's tough. Like I said, Washington's a nice team. They're already got a couple of losses in the Big Ten. Maryland's a nice team, a couple of big losses already. USC, nice team. I've watched them a couple of times. Again, a couple of big losses in the Big Ten. My guys are Rutgers, same thing. Penn State having a great year, but all of a sudden you got a couple of losses in the Big Ten, and boom, it's just like the party's over. It's just so competitive. It's
Yeah.
it's insane.
The margin of error is very slim. It's incredible how.
It is.
It,
Two things I wanted to also just mention. Um, in Suffolk County standings right now, something I was really happy about this year is every week we vote on a coaches poll like the best teams, and the teams that are in the top eight have all scheduled each other non-league, which I think is great for the game. It's something that hadn't been done a lot of times over the last 15 to 20 years, and now it seems like the guys who are near the top are all playing each other, which I think is such a very responsible thing to do. It's for the good of the game for Suffolk County. So Hills East and Bayshore and William Floyd and Southampton and Mount Sinai and Smithtown West and Smithtown East, and they're all playing each other, which I think it's been great to watch these games on Huddle and to watch these games on NFHS. So I have that on one thing. I got a game on the TV. It's been great to watch these guys play each other. So I commend the coaches for having the guts to do that because it's not easy to maybe schedule a game where you could be taking an L on purpose, but sometimes you got to do that for the better of the game and the better of your team. The other thing too is Mike McSloy scheduled NYU in a non-league game, who was number 8 in the country. They had him the other day, but they lost by 7. so that was a tough loss. But Drew was obviously legit, and Rob Ismay doing a great job. The Dartmouth girls are 1-0 in the Ivy League, so that's off to a good start. He got a lot of freshmen contributing. All the kids that Rob recruited. Rob, former player of mine, also. So it's good to watch that. So 1-0 in the Ivy League. I know it's only one game, but still, it's better to be 1-0 than 0-1. And it's good to see that Dartmouth getting off to that good start, and Drew obviously getting off to a great start.
All right, yeah, good stuff to hear. Always give the local love and to your former players as well. Always
Absolutely. I
give them
mean,
a good shout out. It's still good basketball on Long Island here, and we got,
sure.
Mike, former player of yours, guy that Open Gym played with and against. So a lot of
Yep.
respect for him. Just was a,
Yep.
a good guy and a gym rat. So good to see that
Yep.
he's doing well. So
Yeah, he is.
fantastic. I think Uncle Dave, I also wanted to bring up this guy, Travis Perry, that is on Kentucky. 5,000 career high school points. Do you think they were
Yeah.
counting every basket for him as 5 points? I mean, I want to see the buckets for that. I want to see
I don't
that.
know how you get
5,000?
5,000.
How is
I
that
saw.
possible?
I've seen Jimmer Fredette get 2,000. I don't know
Mike,
how.
how do you get 5,000? That is
I
I
mean,
mean,
maybe in Kentucky you're allowed to play up in sixth grade because I know in New York
it has
you
to
could
be a
play up.
situation. I'm just gonna say it had to be a situation where he was like a 7 year player.
Yeah,
There's
well,
no
if you play
way.
in seventh grade and you're scoring like 800 points a year, I mean, I don't know how many games they play in Kentucky or
Right,
wherever
right.
he's from, but if you're playing like 30 games a year and you need like 800 points a year for 6 years, I mean, that's not even it. You need 900 points for 6 years. So I don't know how many games they're playing, but you need 30 a game from like seventh grade all the way through senior year, which is insane. Because if you give me a guy playing 30 a game, I'm not going to let him get 30. I'm going to shut him off.
No, you have guys that are Mr. Basketballs in their states that were NBA players that just maybe got 2,000 or not even 2,000, but
Sure.
this guy got
It's so
five. I
hard
mean,
to it's so hard to get 1,000
a
even.
thousand. I mean, you're an elite scorer if you get 1,000 points. I don't care where
Yeah.
you play. If
Yeah.
you're a 4 year player and you get 1,000 points for a career in high school, it's only 32-minute games.
Yeah.
So
And
just
we
incredible.
only play 20 games. So it's hard, but yeah, people don't understand how competitive it
Yeah,
is. But yeah,
I gotta see
5,000
all those
points.
buckets. Yeah,
I
unbelievable.
thought that was a miss. I thought that must have been a misread too by the announcer. I even did a double take
Yeah,
myself
no,
when he said 5,000.
Jay Billis and Dan Shulin are calling the game. Yeah, they doubled down on it. It wasn't like a misspoke. They were like, no, 5,000 points in Kentucky. I was like, Jesus, okay.
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, that was a tough one because you're sitting there and you're like, wait a second, is that really right?
Yeah, to me,
Another team that I watched that's definitely a comer is Louisville's going to be all right. They beat Virginia. Virginia just collapsed down the stretch, still giving up too many
how
offensive
about
rebounds.
Smith?
But
He's a catch and shoot guy. He's a weapon from the perimeter.
yes, but you can see that Louisville is they're athletic enough. They play hard. They got 11 new guys again, which is hard to follow. But you could see that they're going to be an issue for some teams. There right now, they'd probably gun to your head, you'd probably say that they're not on the, if there's a bubble this early, they'd probably be on the outside of it. But you could see that they're going to be a problem for people because they're athletic. They believe in the one thing I will say about the transfer portal and guys playing on basically they're playing on like 1 and 2 year deals. They play really hard. But we'll say that the basketball and the sets that people are running do seem sometimes a little bit more primitive because there's guys that haven't been together as long. So it's kind of got good and bad on both ends, if you will.
Yeah, Louisville's they're 10-5 now with that win against Virginia. So again,
Sure.
it's early enough in the season where they can catapult themselves here and they can, maybe get on a hot streak here and then all of a sudden they're a top 25 team. I mean, it's certainly plausible, that's for
Sure.
sure.
Yeah, they're,
And
they're 3-1 in the ACC, and Clemson's 4-0, and Duke is 4-0. Duke looked legit yesterday again. Coach Shire was sick. One of my favorite Dukies of all time, Coach
that's the other
Carrawell.
thing too. Yeah, Coach Shire did make the trip for the Duke game against
Yeah,
SMU.
Coach
So,
Coach
Carolina.
Carrawell. I'll tell you
Yep.
what, SMU is going to be legit because
Yeah. Yeah, they're
SMU,
going to
and
be a pain in the ass. You're right.
you
Absolutely.
weren't born in the 80s, but if you go back and watch the Pony Express, SMU has oil money out there right outside of Dallas
Yes.
there, and they're going to spend all the money they want for athletics. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah, they want to win.
football and basketball, they're going to be right where they need to be already. Football, they qualified for some for the playoff, obviously, and so the thing is, like you can see already that they're going to be a problem. So in basketball, you could, like I said, Andy Enfield's done a good job everywhere he's went. So they're going to be a problem in basketball too. Like I said, that pace of play is legit. They have 5 or 6 different kinds of players that can go get their own shot. They've got a couple of men out there, so it's going to be interesting. But to me, the biggest thing right now, though, just watching is how good Georgetown is already, and Ed Cooley's got a good post player there already with him. and how both Michigan State and Michigan, are both look like they're high level right now. So you can see that that's already going to be an issue. But it's going to be a really fun March. I think it's going to be wild because the older teams have such an advantage, but at the same time, some of the very talented kids aren't the older guys. So it's
Right. It's a unique blend for sure. Like for instance,
so
Louisville in this game against Virginia, you got Abakar Traore
yep.
and Smith here. Rain Smith, they're their two leading scorers. They came off the bench, both with 15. So I mean, just kind of bizarre things that your two leading scorers are coming off the bench. You typically don't see something like that.
Well, you can tell that Rain Smith has got the total green light, which is how you have to treat a player
And,
like him. If you're
and
gonna,
field goals, all of his attempts, 3-point shots.
yeah, and if you're gonna have Rain Smith on your team, what's the point if you're not gonna let him pull it? So,
Right.
and he seems to be a fairly intelligent player of the years. So he's a guy that obviously, they're going to be a problem. But you can see already that they're going to be, and Louisville again, they're going to spend the money for basketball. That's a basketball first school. They're going to spend that kind of money. So they're used to winning over there in the old Freedom Hall. Louisville wins championships. They don't like, I think they got three already, so they're not going to be patient either. But they're going
Out-rebounded
to be
Virginia,
tough.
out-rebounded Virginia also by 17, 39-22. So,
Absolutely. Virginia yesterday, we got a couple of Keystone Cop moments there, just some bad decisions, and Virginia's suffering again from two things. We're giving up offensive rebounds and they're turning the ball over, which they've never done under Tony Bennett. So right now it feels like
yeah, turnover
we're up
battle
against it.
9-8. So split
Yeah.
basically even with turnovers. Yep.
Yeah, so they're giving up, they're giving, and then a couple of their turnovers are bad runouts, those live ball turnovers, which I used to tell my guys, throw it out of bounds. At least I can reset my defense.
No, you're right. It's the
But
live ball turnovers that result in points off
well,
turnovers.
that's what happened
That's
with
what kills.
Louisville yesterday. A
Yeah.
couple of those guys has got a couple of dunks and a couple of steals, and all of a sudden you got a fast break, and just some. It's tough. Like I said, the ACC is no place to have a down year either, and so it's gonna be wild. I mean, like I said, Cal and Stanford aren't that bad, but now they're finding out what life's like in the ACC. But like I said, I think SMU is gonna make the transition this year, at least for this year. I think they're gonna make it more successfully than Cal and Stanford. Although Cal and Stanford both look legit, also.
I think also I have to bring up Uncle Dave, someone who stood out to me over the weekend, Elijah Martin for Florida. Clayton
Yeah,
Jr. had 33, but Elijah Martin had 26, 9 of 17
yeah,
from the field.
yep,
And he had two shots that were incredible. He had two fadeaways from the mid range. That
sure.
uses his pivot too. When he hit one over Carr, and then he hits a step back three. He had like two mid range shots that were just incredible display of footwork. And then hits a three. So this is him and Clayton Jr. I think those are two guys you're going to see in the association. I think for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean Clayton is just so tough. I mean, he's just gotta, like I said, the spacing in these games is so outrageous. It's like you don't know what you can do with it, but you can't give any help.
No, exactly. Especially with the college 3-point line. These guys, they're good shooters. That's a layup for them.
I still think you should try to find the one guy you can help off of and almost make it like a mockery and see
Right.
if you can put the pressure on one guy. It's
Right.
something that I know I'm at the high school level. It's a lot different, but in the scouting report, it's just one guy that leave him open. There's a reason you're leaving him open. I know at that level, like I always thought playing the Warriors, I would just leave Draymond open because he's a head case. So I would just purposely tell him I'm leaving you open.
Well, that's
You
what
know,
some
hit,
teams
but
were
yeah,
doing with like Ben Simmons too. You have to have a
yeah,
situation where you can. Again, if you don't have to guard a guy, it means you have more free reign to cover other guys. So that's what if you
sure. Playing
ever
five
have
on
a
four, you
chance.
can clog it up.
Yeah, if you ever have a chance to do that, you do it.
Yeah, I could clog up the middle on the 5-on-4. It's pretty easy.
Typically, what every team has is they have basically a rim protector and a guy who can catch lobs, and the other four guys are
Sure,
just playing out. You don't have two
sure.
guys on the block anymore.
No,
So
no, you don't.
the game is it's funny. You can go and you could watch like a 1980s NBA game and you watch a game today. It looks like totally two different sports.
It does. Yeah, it does. Totally does. Yep, totally
All right,
does.
Uncle
Could
Dave.
couldn't agree more.
Well, I think this is a good place to wrap up here.
Sure.
Definitely had another nice weekend of hoop. So we're going to
Yep.
continue throwing in these NBA topics because there's a lot of news spreading. Next show, we're going to talk about Jimmy Butler and his situation currently with the Miami Heat.
Oh God, yeah.
Ended 7 games due to contract detrimental to the team. And we're going to talk about how Jimmy has kind of outworn his welcome everywhere he's been. So he's kind
Yeah.
of floating in that Terrell Owens territory now, where I think, all right, everyone, live long and prosper, and may the force be with you.
All right. Thank you, Spock.